I'll set up nicer. There we go.
Good afternoon and welcome to the latest episode of the Stargate Universe Sci-Fi Cult Classics documentary. I'm delighted this evening to be joined by Garry Chalk, who played the role of Colonel Chekov in Stargate SG1. I suppose, Garry, first of all, 2 decades on now, roughly, since Stargate, your time in Stargate SG1. Does it almost still feel like yesterday that you were marching up and down the set in film and production and film episodes, or do you have noticed the time? Does it feel like a distant memory now at this stage?
No, for the most part, I mean, it was a long time ago, but it seems like only yesterday. But no, I remember all the good times we had on that set. It was just it was wonderful. I remember my last show. I actually remember so well when I got blown up on the Korolev rocket. Yeah, launched the rockets in the battle with the Ori, and I'll never forget that. That was such a wonderful day, but sad at the same time because it meant that I was toast. And I was hoping they were going to stick me in a life pod. But, you know, I can't believe it's 20 years ago. Really, I can't. It seems like, I know that sounds so funny to say, it seems like only yesterday, but no, I know that it happened, but I didn't realize it happened like 20 years ago. But I remember everything so vividly. There was so many great memories of that show.
And I suppose, Garry, in terms of Stargate, we know there's been Stargate SG1, Stargate Atlantis, and Stargate Origin, and the original sort of Stargate movie. You appeared in Stargate SG1, and probably Stargate SG1 was probably the cornerstone of the franchise, the big sort of marquee sort of a player. I suppose it's even till this day, the show is repeated in so many TV stations around the world in so many different languages. Subtitled all over across the world. You still sort of get taken away back sometimes by the huge success of the show outside the USA and Canada and places like Brazil, South Africa, Germany, France, England, Ireland, that it had such a universal appeal.
Well, I think what is universal about the show, apart from the fact that the Stargate takes you anywhere into many different cultures, what's so universal about it is the relationships between the people in the show. Even though they're villains or they're villains and they're good guys, it was the relationships and the chemistry between those characters, like, you know, with the doctor and Amanda and Richard Dean and of course my friend Don, and they all had a great chemistry together. And what made the show so appealing was not only the writing, because the writing was great writing, and there were some great storylines, but it was the relationships to the people that people could relate to, and I think they're universal, and that and those universal themes were what made it so attractive. At least that's the feedback I got back from people that I was talking to in different countries. I mean, it was when I was in it didn't matter if I was in Czechoslovakia or in Ireland or in England. It's just the people that they love it for the same reason.
And I suppose, Garry, Stargate SG1 holds a dear place in your heart. And how did the opportunity come about to get cast in a role as Colonel Chekov? I spoke to a few actors and they told me in doing this documentary so far, they had tried out for different roles and were unsuccessful. And then maybe the directors and producers came back to them later and said, we have a different opportunity, or we have someone else in mind. Would you try out for this? Was it a case of that you were sort of sought after for the Colonel sort of Chekov role? Was it made for you, or did you have to go through a rigorous audition process? Or like many other actors and actresses, did you try out for different parts beforehand as well?
I actually only tried out for one part on Stargate, and that was at the pilot episode, and it was for an Air Force officer, and it was a smaller part, and I didn't get it, but it went to a guy named Robert Wisden, and he was there for like 2 episodes, I think. But what had happened was, when I had worked with Richard Dean and the guys on MacGyver before.
Okay.
back in the 80s. And I'd also worked with John Smith, who was a producer in a thing called the Beachcombers, way back in the 80s. And they said, no, we're going to get a part for you. We're going to get a part for you. And I said, well, okay, when? Oh, it's coming. So year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4 goes by. Nothing, not an audition, nothing. And then one day, I get a call, and I think it was John Smith, and he goes, oh, we got a part for you. And I said, really? Oh, what part's that? He says, oh, it's a great part. This is this guy, Colonel Chekov. And I said, Colonel Chekov? Yeah, he runs the Stargate, the Russian Stargate. And I said, cool, sounds like fun. And he goes, yeah, how's your Russian?
Okay.
And I said, what? He says, how's your Russian? He says, I don't speak Russian. And he goes, oh, geez, you don't speak Russian? No, but this guy's a Russian. And I said, no, we're kidding. We got you a tutor. And there's a guy's going to teach you how to speak Russian. So I ended up having to speak Russian in the show. And my tutor was a guy named Alexander Kalugin, who's a director now in Moscow, a TV director, a film director. And he was my coach for a couple of weeks, and I learned all my scenes in Russian. And he says, "Oh, you sound just like Stalin." That was my accent. I sounded like Stalin. And so I went and shot my day. And on my first day on set, I think it was Peter DeLuise who was directing it. He goes, "Oh, you know, the show's too long. We're going to have to cut that big, long Russian scene." And I went, no, I've been working on this for weeks. I'm going to do this goddamn scene. And he goes, nope, we're going to cut it. And I said, no, I'm doing this scene. He said, okay, you can do it, but we're only taking the last 2 lines. And I worked my ass off on that to get it just perfect. But anyway, it would turn out to be a good deal. You know, I lasted out for several years and did a bunch of shows and had a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I suppose, Garry, you mentioned that sort of learning Russian, and in terms of just the dialogue of obviously you're rehearsing with your tutor in terms of one-on-one, but then coming on then and repeating those lines live in terms of shooting in terms of Russian. Was that sort of a different sort of eerie experience? Do you feel uncomfortable in your own sort of skin having to do that, obviously, or were you so at ease with your lines and your scripts? Obviously, as an actor, it comes a second nature.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm pretty at ease when it comes to dialogue. Nothing phases me when I go onto set, and what I found was when I spoke my lines with a Russian accent, when I spoke, my English lines with a Russian accent, I was having the same problem that Russians have saying certain words.
Okay.
Getting them out so that they sound like perfect Russian. But sometimes you cannot speak certain words because they will not come out. And it was embarrassing at a point. But in Russian, I had, you could just rip it off. But trying to say it now I feel like a guy speaking English as a second language. It was quite funny. But so I toned down my Russian accent a little bit just so I could get the English out. But I found it's pretty easy, pretty fun.
And I suppose, Garry, in terms of, you mentioned you joined after 4 seasons, and I suppose Stargate really, SG1 really took off after the 2nd season in terms of the boom sort of factor. So you probably were aware that you were coming to a big sort of production at the time, and obviously looking on from the outside, you probably watched 1 or 2 episodes before you actually came in, and I imagine before you tried out for your role. And were you sort of taken back when you arrived on set in terms of the scale and the mass grandeur of the project?
One thing that I found that when I went in for Stargate was that it was a well-oiled machine. The crew was amazing. Everybody knew their stuff. You go in and it was all very organized and fabulous. And I was just, I'd say not intimidated because I already had a lot of shows under my belt at that time. I wasn't intimidated by it, but I was certainly in awe of how professional and how put together the show was, and they got la creme de la creme as far as the crew goes. So yeah, I guess I was going, I'm in. I'm on a show. I'm on a great show. Yay.
Yeah, I suppose Gary, in terms of that, you were sort of the anti good guy in terms of that. In terms of the SG1, the sort of, did you just sort of notice after coming in there after the fourth season, just seeing Michael Shanks, Richard Dean Anderson, Amanda Tapping, Christopher Judge working together, that they were so in sync with each other that they almost sort of knew what the next person was going to say next, sort of scenario?
Oh yeah, no, because their chemistry, as I said, their chemistry was so great, and it's like you feel like an interloper. You go and you feel like an outsider, which was perfect for my character because my character was an outsider, and he was a bit of a villain. But we had with General Hammond and the Colonel, we had a mutual grudging respect, and it made for a nice chemistry for us as well, because a part of me is going, yeah, you Americans, you always get the gravy. Now what do I get? I get a piece of bread. It's like that. But and I feel like that grudging rivalry but respect carried over in the show, and that's why people sort of glommed onto the character and liked the character so much, is because of that, is because if you want to make things work, you got to work together. Yeah.
And I suppose, Gary, I spoke to Cliff Simon, who played the Gould Ball in the sort of show, and he told me that he had no such thing as a 6 or 7 deal in terms of episode. Every episode he went in, he said he worked his ass off because he didn't know if he was going to be coming back again. There was actually no guarantees as such. There was no written paper saying that you're going to be appearing over 2 or 3 seasons with 4, 6 or 7 episodes. Was this a sort of similar story for you? Did you know that
exactly
you'd be coming
the
back?
same. You never know when you're going to come in. They would say you're going to be doing this episode and this episode for sure. We don't know what's going on after that, but that was the beauty of it, is they weren't writing like 10, 15 shows ahead. They kept changing them, and it was like that. It was what you call a show to contract.
And I suppose, Gary, in terms of that, you mentioned there's sort of 2 shows in succession. When you completed those, would it have been a sense of contentment if that was it? If you weren't sort of called back, did you come out of those 2 shows thinking to yourself, well, that might be it, there mightn't be a chance, that might be my time in Stargate SG1? And if that was the case, or was there always a sense of a feeling that there was something further in the pipeline for your character?
Oh, I had no doubt there was going to be something for the pipeline, because the way the storylines are written, they don't just go, yes, we're going to set up this great story and then we're going to kill you. No, we knew that you're going to be coming back for more. So that was always nice to know. I mean, I had the same thing on another series I did called Cedar Cove, where you never knew if you were going to, that you were going to be doing this episode and this episode for sure, but nothing was locked down. So they put you on what they call a show to show. And I was in there for a couple of years. So that's just the way it works, and unless you get a signed 3-year contract or 2-year contract, you don't know what's going to happen. I mean, they could kill you off in a second just by, having an alien blow you up. But that never happened until the last episode.
Yeah, I saw something there, a recent sort of interview where you actually spoke about the aliens, the sort of Asgard, and actually seeing them in sort of the flesh, sort of costumes that they were sort of wearing, and you said you were sort of taken back how sort of real they sort of looked.
I know. And when I was sitting there with that's the iridescent guy, right?
Yeah.
The iridescent. Well, because I felt him, and he felt like, just like it was real, you know. And when he talked, his mouth and his eyes and everything, and I was like, shit, I'm talking to a real alien. It was a bit unnerving, but it was quite cool. I thought it was fantastic. Yeah.
And did it almost feel like an ET moment for you?
It did, yes. It did. And it was no, it was quite the treat. And I'm the what? I couldn't make up my mind what the hell this was about. But I knew that, the part of me knew that it was a puppet, but it was very, very convincing puppet. It was quite
and I suppose, Garry, in terms of the props and the sets on Stargate SG1, one of those memorable was your sort of battle, battle fighter or sort of ship, the sort of Russian sort of ship. And what was that sort of like? In terms of stepping inside of that, in terms of the sort of, I know the outside of it, you probably was only shown on air, but the actual inside walking around that.
Oh, yeah, on my ship, you mean? On the Korolev? Oh,
yeah.
Fantastic. It was a huge set. I mean, it was like, as big as the main floor of my house, maybe even bigger. Okay. We had like 15, 20 people in there, and and everything worked, and my chair was fabulous. I felt like, Captain Kirk in my Star Trek chair, and it was all the screens, everything was practical and working, and it's for all intents and purposes, you're in a ship. The only thing we didn't see is the aliens shooting at us, on our monitors. On screen. We didn't see that. We'd see, a piece of paper going like this, moving across and then firing at us. And so we got that, but because they were all put in later on in the special effects. But that whole Stargate set was something. The big gate and the big huge machine guns aimed at the gate, and the way it moved when it turned around, and the control rooms and the offices. I mean, it took up an entire studio.
Okay. And Garry, one thing that's sort of noted, I heard as well, maybe you can confirm if this is true or not, that actually on your sort of ship as well, that you were the only sort of native fluent English speaker, that the rest of the cast members on the ship were actually all Russians, all Russian speaking persons. Is that sort of true? They actually go to the extent of hiring out 10 or 12 Russian actors or actresses to be beside you on the ship?
The entire crew, except for me, was Russian.
Oh.
I can even have now. There was Sasha, there was Vlad, there was Kirov, there was what the hell was her name? Not Olga, Irina, and there were a bunch of people that I just cannot remember their names, but I remember they were all fluent Russians. Because I kept going, how do I say this? And he goes, Raketya. And it's like, Raketya. But, and then I can't remember the word now because it's been so long ago. But so I had my little coaches all around me. It was great. And they were all Russians. And they all live here. And since Stargate, I have worked with those Russian actors.
Okay.
1, 2, 3. At least 3 times in different shows, maybe 4.
Okay.
Who plays one, and the guy Alexandra, my coach, the guy who coached me for Russia, Kalugin, the guy who lives in Moscow, he actually came and guest starred on 2 episodes of my series, Cold Squad.
Okay.
Playing a Russian detective investigating a cold case in Vancouver of a Russian emigre or Russian diplomat or emigre who was killed in Vancouver. And so he came from Moscow Police Department as a Russian detective to investigate this cold case with the detective that worked for me. And they partnered up for 2 episodes. It was quite fun.
I suppose, Gary, you mentioned that you previously worked with Richard Dean Anderson on MacGyver, that you were there for 1 or 2 episodes. And I suppose his character is legendary in terms of the sci-fi industry, Jack O'Neill. In fact, probably his character morphed into probably the legend himself in terms of outgrew the person in terms of Richard Dean Anderson, the character Jack O'Neill. It was so famous. But for the time you walked first into the set, meeting Richard again, was it almost like, hey, here you are again, hi Gary, long time no see, or what was that sort of first conversation was like?
No, it was wonderful because you know, we had worked on one, two, three. I did 3 episodes of MacGyver, and then I did one as a special skill guy, because I used to be a pool player, and I had to do a special trick shot that O'Neill MacGyver had made to win this game in this pool hall, but he wasn't a pool player. So I went in and I shot this wonderful trick shot that he supposedly shot, but it was actually me who shot it. And I came in as a what they call consultant.
Okay.
And it was quite wonderful. Seeing it was just like old times. And then we'd see each other in the bar sometimes, and his friend Michael, who was also the producer. He got me in there, and Johnny Smith, who I'd known for decades. So it was like old home week.
Okay.
And to this day, the producer of MacGyver back then was Steve Downing, who's now in his 80s. He's still a friend of mine. I have him on Facebook.
I suppose, Gary, lastly, before I let you go, probably the hardest question I'm going to ask you, in terms of, let's see if there was a Stargate sort of dictionary made, and they put all the characters into the dictionary, and under the character Colonel Chekov, they left 2 sentences blank underneath, and they asked you, Garry Chalk, as you've portrayed the character Colonel Chekov, to write those 2 sentences. What would you like those 2 sentences to read?
In my accent, the last 2 sentences are, I love my dog and I love my wife. In that order, no. No, I think the last 2 sentences of my biography is, some guys get the shaft sometimes, and I would get the shaft all the time. No, I don't know. I think, no, poor Chekov. He always thought he was getting the worst part of the deal. And he was always complaining that he would never, he was never getting the lion's share. It was always, my boys die first, then you guys go in. It was that sort of thing. It says, well, in my perfect world, my boys go last.
On that note, Garry Chalk, a pleasure talking to you today to relive your memories of your time in Stargate SG1, playing the character Colonel Chekov in the latest episode of the Stargate Universe Sci-Fi Cult Classics documentary. Pleasure, Gary, as always, and no doubt if there's a future movie in the line, I know there's rumblings about bringing the Stargate back into the 21st century. No doubt there'll be a cameo role for Colonel Chekov somewhere down the line.
Yes, as I emerge from my life pod. Lovely to see you. And say hi to the old sod. I was out there a couple of years ago for a convention, electronics, internet convention at the big the fairgrounds there.
Oh, Electronic Arts, yeah.
Yeah, there was a big fairground. There's a big fairground where they have all the like the sheep trials, but it was a big for internet.
Yeah,
It was a huge
yeah.
thing. And I had some friends of mine who live in Dublin, and we went on a little tour around Dublin. Went to see U2's hotel and things like that, and the Liffey and the museum and that. And then we have relatives up north in Lisburn.
Okay.
So
Northern Ireland, yeah.
Yeah, in Northern Ireland. So we were up in Lisburn and up in Derry and in Belfast, just to see the rallies, you know. But it was quite lovely. I actually was quite amazed about Belfast, because I was in Belfast like 20 years ago. And the difference, the changes that they made in that city in the last couple of years is quite incredible. Quite incredible. Indeed. And Dublin too. I love Dublin. I stayed there in St. Stephen's St. Stephen's Green.
Oh yeah, yeah.
By the Temple Bar.
Yeah.
Lovely. Anyway, all right, my boy. Thank you so
Garry,
much.
take care.
All right, we'll see you. Bye-bye.